everybody remain calm. Chances are, they may not even be here for us. But just in case they are, scramble the fighters. Okay, maybe they are here for us. Send squads 2 and 5 to Blue Sector. Tell all troops to prepare for ground assault. I'll deal with that. Lieutenant! Prepare my ship, the Aluminum Falcon! I'm breathing an energy spike from the... Crap, look! They got Fox! No, I mean, Rupert Murdoch was kind of already on the dark side anyway. Alright, fine, let's do this. Easy, stay on target. We just have to pray that their Dark Lord of the Mouse is incapable of defending a 3x3 exhaust vent. If our lucky blew the entire defense budget on the special effects. And don't screw this up for me! It's hard enough flying this giant ship into this tiny trench. Now, fire the missiles! Right now, a low-end Disney executive has to make a call, and he needs to explain to the higher-ups how their multi-trillion-dollar space station just got destroyed by a bunch of technicolored horses. Heads are gonna roll when they find out that all their plans were brought to nothing at the hooves of the crew of the Aluminum Falcon.
What the hell is an Aluminum Falcon?
My name is Hunter, the movie reviewing pony, because when it comes to cinema, humans cannot be trusted. I'm also not fond of bees, but I get why we need them. Oh boy! Star Wars! The gravitational pull of this now 4-decade-old franchise is hard to resist. You know, despite its countless ups and downs. But hey, on the upside, this exists. But on the other hand, this exists. And I haven't really decided if Disney's brought balance to the Force yet. Because keep in mind, we could be watching Star Wars detours right about now if Disney didn't stop him. So yeah, been 2 years since the last review, still can't make my mind up about you, Star Wars. On one hoof, I really want to see your long-term plan for this franchise. And on the other hoof, I really want to see an Eclipse-class Star Destroyer on film. And since I skipped out on Rogue One, or as I like to call it, the movie where everyone dies and the rebellion gets its ass kicked, it'll be good to jump back into this franchise with a movie by a director who's hardly known for anything. Hey, it worked out for them with Rogue One. They must have some overall plan. So, go ahead, Star Wars The Last Jedi. Impress me. Star Wars Episode 8. Somehow I managed to avoid pretty much every spoiler for this movie before going into it. So, before we go any further with this, I'm just gonna say right up front, spoiler alert. And I don't mean just a few spoilers, no. I'm not holding back for this one. I did my research on this one, and I'm not holding back. And I know literally nothing about the trailer distribution for this movie, because again, I was avoiding pretty much every spoiler for this. Which I might add has been incredibly hard because I work on the internet. So since I know nothing of the setup leading up to the actual release of this movie, I'm just gonna skip ahead to the good and the bad that led up to the release of this movie, because apparently that's my normal formula now. There is a whole bunch of controversies around the new trilogy for the Star Wars franchise, but a lot of it seems pointless to me. Mainly because everyone's screaming about feminism, which I am not gonna touch that with a 10-foot pole. I'm here to review a movie, not fill the comment section with social justice warrior crap. Those of you who have been with this channel long enough will notice I had a similar approach with the American Sniper review. I'm just here to review movies, not talk about propaganda. The only major controversy that is actually worth bringing up is the basically erasing of the Star Wars expanded universe. Disney came in and threw out over 100 years worth of the Star Wars timeline to make new trilogies for the Star Wars franchise. I mean, sure, they rebranded all it as Star Wars Legends, but it still leaves a lot of people very angry. I said it before and I'll say it again, I want my Eclipse-class Star Dreadnoughts. And it took me a while to see this movie, so it was kind of hard to ignore the public outcry. I think the most notable outcry, for me anyway, was on Twitter from iHeartKP a lot, who I still super duper want to do a crossover with. And the never-ending slew of crap that we have to put up with in Hollywood, such as porgs, merchandising, killing off major characters, changing canon so we have to learn new reference material, listening to now-aged actors complain about their roles. Just a never-ending slew of complaining, bullshit controversies that I swear are just made up at this point, sexual harassment in the workplace. So, all in all, pretty normal, all things considered, for a build-up for a movie. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary. When you look at the big picture, it's just all the usual bullshit that's easy to ignore. So, you all came here for my opinion. Is it a good movie? Well, it's debatable. I'm very conflicted about this movie. On one hand, yes, it's a good film. I'd recommend it if you liked the last one. On the other hand, having some of these characters go through what Disney's putting them through seems unfair. For Celestia's sake, two of our main characters are dead now. When we were going off of the expanded universe canon, everything with these characters was wrapped up nicely. With this, most of them are being screwed over. Han got stabbed with a lightsaber, and Luke Skywalker became a ghost or something. These are characters, nay, heroes from people's childhoods, and Disney is destroying everything that stood for, just so they can make more money. This isn't fair to these characters, and it isn't fair for the fans. But I'll be fair. All of these characters are fleshed out, the motivation behind these characters is well established, the plot and plot twists are very well executed, even if the storyline of this movie does get a bit stale. But don't worry, I'll get into that. The effects are great, and overall from a visual standpoint, this movie is very well shot. And I think I'm gonna start off there. I said in my last Star Wars review that they were actually going back to the way Star Wars was originally shot without an overabundance of CG. It's the same thing in this movie, which I feel is better for the actors and better for the overall performance of the film. For example, BB-8, which is actually a remote-controlled robot. And I feel I need to touch base on the porgs. Yes, of all the things I need to touch base on, I need to touch base on the porgs. I don't actually look at the porgs as an intentional marketing ploy. I actually look at them as a happy little accident. And that's because for the scenes that they filmed on an island in this movie, they didn't want to have to CG out all of the puffins that were actually native to the island. Which is actually a pretty interesting move. And guys, puffins are really cute. They look like a mix between a penguin and a toucan, and they got that adorable little sad look. Sorry, cuteness overload there for a second. The characters are well established in this movie too. even if there are a few that we never learn the names of. But in their defense, if we don't learn their names, chances are they're not too important to the plot of the movie anyway. And all of the actors in this movie put up a very good performance, including Carrie Fisher, may she rest in peace. And that's not to say that the character development isn't there either, because it is. Thank God Kylo Ren finally got rid of that stupid helmet. Still waiting for him to get rid of the stupid lightsaber, but it's progress. And another thing that I gotta give them credit for is they steered away from a typical Disney trope that I see all the time, characters dying at the beginning of the movie. We all know Luke Skywalker was gonna die in this, and he actually dies at the end. Same thing happened with Han Solo, actually. It's a stereotypical Disney trope that isn't really a stereotype because they keep doing it. They also did the same thing with Rogue One, which makes me think that Disney is keeping a rather loose leash on the writing, which I guess technically confirms my original theory that they're like Marvel and that they're letting LucasArts do their own thing. Not sure why that means we have to go off of a new canon, but okay.
Seriously, J.J. Abrams, kiss my ass.
All in all, it's a well-rounded movie with well-established characters, good cinematography, good visual effects, a good cast, and good dramatic performance. And another thing, it's back. Moments in this movie that happened by pure coincidence and pure luck. To my relief, there isn't a lot of that in this movie, which is a problem I had with the previous movie. The plot, even though stale, also feels way more original from what they were trying to do in the last movie, which was copy episode 4. And all of these are worth major points in my book. I give a lot of points out for improvement. Okay, good stuff's out of the way. Now I get to rip into this movie like a can of oats. I know what you're thinking. Didn't you already do that? Well, yes, technically I did, but that was more of a rant. I mentioned earlier that this movie's plot gets stale after a while, and that's because this movie's basically one giant chase scene. The major plot focus on this movie is that the remaining Resistance fleet is being chased down by the First Order. Quite literally being chased down. They get their engines running on full blast trying to get away from Snoke's flagship, deflecting all of their laser blasts for an unrealistic amount of time with their Mon Calamari shielding. And even after that's done, they're still being chased. It's fucking chase scene, the movie. Trademark. They are going into this battle without a whole load of unarmed transports this time, though, which is probably a point in their favor. But the whole thing stops being fun after a while. Especially since the Resistance has plot devices that we know are there and can make a huge difference, like their nuclear bomb frigate. They're not even trying to fire back. Now with that side of the plot out of the picture, this movie actually is separated into 3 separate plot lines. One on the island, one following Finn, one following the fleet. Now mixing these 3 together, it doesn't mix. Every now and then we'll cut over to a different plot line and we'll want to keep following the previous one. Some of these are more boring than others. Some of them are more slow-paced than others. The one on the island barely ties in with the rest of the movie at all. It doesn't get any plot relevance until the end of the movie, and by that point everyone's dead. And that's another thing. This movie didn't leave itself off on a decent note like the rest of the movies do. But there are 2 sides to this argument. On one side, you could say it's similar to The Empire Strikes Back in that it turns a story of hope into a story of despair. And on the other hand, they just want you to go see the 3rd movie. And I'll give this the benefit of the doubt because I can see both sides of the argument. It makes sense from a business standpoint, and yes, I want to see the 3rd movie. Let me establish that I do want to go back for the 3rd movie. If anything, to see how this all pans out. And another thing, this movie is tiring. There's so much running around, there's so much fighting, there's so much struggling. It's good for tension, but there's too much. From beginning to end, there isn't a moment where this movie just stops and let us breathe. Yeah, we're cutting back to the island every now and then, but at the same time, the fleet's running out of fuel or we're being chased down by AT-ATs on steroids. And shut up, I know what they're actually called, it was just more fun to say that. I honestly don't see why they have to struggle so hard. The First Order is supposed to be a fringe group, one of the sub-factions that came out of the defeated Empire, like the Imperial Remnant. There's no explanation as to how the situation got this bad, and there's no reason as to why the rest of the galaxy isn't helping the Resistance. When they blew up an entire star system with the Star Killer base, you didn't think, oh, I don't know, maybe we should go over there and do something about that? Don't act like the problem's just gonna go away on its own! And another thing, they're trying way too hard with the supremacy. This thing's half the size of the Death Star. And since that's the case, they're trying way too hard to make the First Order intimidating, considering they're a fringe group. I'm willing to accept the theories that they pooled all of their resources into this one ship, but that's a stretch. 60 kilometers wide is a big ship. That's more than twice the size of everything on my size comparison chart. Which, the biggest thing in there is from Warhammer. Supreme Leader Snoke was a major problem for me in this movie too. The way they kill him is interesting, that's for damn sure. But would it have killed you to give him a bit of backstory and a little more development before you killed him off? We have no idea who he is, how he got his start, where he came from. Now he's dead and we don't have answers. And while the way that he is killed is interesting, it sort of feels like Darth Maul in that he's awesome and then he dies pathetically. He also might seem a fair bit overpowered. And I'm done with overpowered villains at least until Avengers 3, mainly because I want to see what they're able to do with that guy. And I know I said it before, but I'm gonna say it again. These characters are heroes. People grew up with them. They aspired to be like them. And I seriously don't feel that they deserve the treatment that Disney is giving them. You could have cut ahead 100 years after all the original characters passed away peacefully, and everyone would have been fine with that. You could have kept the bulk of the expanded universe if you did that even. But you didn't do that. And now we have to watch them suffer. In a world that's falling apart already, we don't need more heartbreak. That's a hell of a list, guys. I could probably find more if I looked even harder, but I think I got the majority of what's wrong with this movie and what's right with this movie. Before I give this movie my final verdict, let me explain my rating system a little bit so you guys don't go nuts. 10 is a perfect movie, a 1 is absolute garbage in every way, like the first Star Trek movie. A 5 is a completely average movie. If it's better than 5, it's good. If it's worse than 5, it's bad. Try to think of 5 as a true neutral. So on that note, my final verdict for this movie is a 7 out of 10. Surprising, given everything wrong with it. Yeah, it's flawed, and I had to knock a lot of points off of it for destroying people's childhoods, but at the same time, it's not a bad film. From a technical standpoint, this movie works very well. It's not as good as The Force Awakens by any particularly small margin, but it's not a terrible film. Compared to what we had last year, like the Emoji Movie, this is definitely towards the top of the list of films I would recommend from 2017. And I cannot stress this enough, I want to go back for the third movie. Disney's Star Wars hasn't driven me away yet. We'll see what happens later this year with the Solo prequel. It's also hinging on whether or not EA gets to keep the Star Wars license, because oh, for the love of Celestia, please don't let them keep that. My advice, if you saw the last movie, see this one. If you didn't like the last movie, you're probably not gonna like this movie. But definitely check this movie out if you're into the franchise. And at the end of the day, it's kind of a dream come true for me to pick on Star Wars. My name is Hunter, and I'm captain of the Aluminum Falcon. May the Force be with you.